what is up, guys and gals? Welcome back to another chess video. This is me, JK Jax, back at it again. Today, we are gonna be playing the Caro-Kann part 2. So, in the first part, I've taught about the advanced variation, where they go e5, and to me, it's the best way to play against the Caro-Kann. If you want the video on how to counter the Caro-Kann, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be sure to make a video on it. But today we are going to be covering the exchange. As black here, you will see the exchange like 70% of the time, followed by advanced variation that comes in a close second. In the lower rating, this is actually pretty annoying for black to deal with, so you should be well informed and inform a trusted adult, aka me. I'm not an adult yet, but whatever. White has 3 moves: knight f3, bishop d3, and c4. I'll explain each of these moves in short detail. Knight f3 is to develop a knight and play principal chess. Bishop d3, you develop a bishop on a very good square. And c4 is the most aggressive variation of the Caro-Kann. You're kind of playing this in a little bit like a Queen's Gambit structure, but mainly you should be fine here if you know what you're doing. I will cover the pan-off in the next video to make sure that we follow in the Caro-Kann chronological order and stuff like that. So against knight f3, I like to play knight c6. Okay, and if they play c4, you can actually transpose this into the pan-off attack. So that kind of already cuts so much of your theory away and cuts the amount of time spent for you to be studying so much theory. I believe that if you want to truly get better at the opening, you should be reliant on practical experience rather than just memorizing, you know. Whenever you watch my videos, I just hope that the viewers try to understand the idea behind the moves rather than studying the exact moves. Because if you study the exact moves, when you hit into the middle game, sure, you get a good position, but what are you going to do? It's like a chef who know what the recipe is but doesn't have experience in cooking. So you end up just not cooking anything. You just cook shit. Okay, you don't cook a Michelin star gourmet meal. You just cook absolute dog poo. So that's why I believe that you should be understanding the moves, the idea behind the moves, rather than just blatantly memorizing. That's just the worst way to learn. So the main move here is to play bishop b5, which in this case, I like queen a5 a lot, which helps me to get a free development on my queen with the tempo. And of course, the only move in the position, it's quite obvious, is knight c3. And over here, I like this move a lot, bishop g4. You pin the knight to the queen, and it involves one of the more common ideas in the Caro-Kann where the bishop pins the knight to the queen. Like even in the advance where, you know, e4, in the advance you also see this motif a lot where this bishop goes to g4 to pin the knight to the queen. Castles, and what you're going to do here is you're going to make the Caro pyramid, and you're just going to develop your pieces as per normal. So that's how you want to play knight f3. Fairly simple, right? And that's one variation done so fast. And now let's go to the next one, bishop to d3. In the next video, I'm going to be covering c4. Bishop d3 is the main move, and my recommendation here is knight c6. Now, here I've seen weird moves. I've seen, again, if they play knight f3, just remember that whenever the knight jumps to f3, you bring the bishop to pin the knight to the queen. Okay? I've seen this before. It's very awkward, but what you're gonna do is you're just gonna develop the knight normally, and you're gonna develop your bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen. Yes, I know they can push this pawn forward, but that means that queen and knight is kind of stuck, don't you think? And you also weaken the dark square diagonals if this pawn ever pushes forward. So that's why I like this variation. But of course, you can study with the engine, and there are some lines with e6. Although that you block in your own light square bishop, if you can handle and play with a lack of space, then I definitely think this is the best variation for you. But humanly wise, this just doesn't look fun to play as black at all. And I just prefer the more traditional way of developing your knight and just go on with your idea. You build your Caro pyramid and you put your bishop and e7 castles and you play along the queen side once again. Of course, the other move, which is the best move, is pawn to c3. Pawn to c3, main move, because you defend a pawn with a pawn. And now there are two recommendations for you. One of my recommendations is knight f6. It's a very principled way to play this position, and you might want to pair it up with e5 in the future, for sure. Depends on what the opponent plays. So, but if you want to cut the amount of theory, e5 is the way to go, is my main move. de, and knight takes e5. And you see two moves here, queen e2 and knight f3. And also you might see this random check, which you can just bring your knight back and you're okay here. And you're not afraid to destroy your pawn structure because now you have an open b file to yourself. This is open for you, which prevents the white king from castling. And then you can put your bishop here and just look these two monstrous bishops just controlling so much space in the opponent's territory. It's mental. So they can't get. So here I actually want to take the bishop rather than the knight because as you can see here, most of white's pawns are on dark squares. So that means, generally speaking, white has sufficient dark square control, but the light squares are not as strong. That's why I kind of want to remove one of the important defenders of the light squares by having the knight chop away the bishop. Another way you can play is you can just solidify your knight in the center, but it's not as good for sure. Definitely just trade. And you play bishop d6, so you're kind of, in a sense, playing the exchange Caro, but as black now, because just now your the bishop was on d3, right? Now it's just mirroring each other on d6. So, and of course your idea is just gonna be knight f6, bishop g4, castles, and as you can see here, this is why Gotham Chess recommended the Caro-Kann to beginners, because it's not very theory dense, and it's also, most variations kind of overlap with one another, which helps you to save time in theory. And of course, it's easy to play, it's easy to understand, very beginner friendly. And does it serve you well through the late game? Kinda, but it's not as effective as when you just started chess. So, but I still adopt the Caro-Kann till this day. It's very nice. And here, yep, they take the pawn. I know you sacrifice the pawn, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna continue developing with knight e7. Knight e7. Why not knight f6? Why not knight f6? Well, they have this check. And there's this, which you kind of spend moves trying to cover your own king, which is kind of a waste of a tempo. So if you want to save on the amount of tempo you use, you just go here. And this check just won't be as effective, right? Because he has no more queen e2 check and, you know, forcing your bishop to move back and all. You save a lot of time. You can spend the time that you save to continue developing your pieces. And over here, I would say that black is slightly better, but engine says that white has plus 0.2 here, but I'm kind of unconvinced. To be honest, both sides enjoy fair chances and both sides have fun, right? Another way you can play is to just develop the knight, defend the pawn in the center, and of course you're just gonna, no, you don't develop your bishop here. You just continue developing like this, bishop d6, castles, and generally good position. And of course the other variation I recommend is knight f6. To me, this is the more principled way and the more fun way to play with the Caro-Kann. Two moves by white here. Knight f3, which again, you pin, and bishop f4. Here you play bishop g4, and you may think to yourself, Jack, so weird. Why are you letting your opponent get a free tempo on you? You sacrifice this tempo to disallow the knight to go from its natural square f3. When the knight is on f3, it does a lot of purpose. It wants to jump to e5 in the future, and of course, protects d4. But now the knight can't even jump to f3 anymore, and the queen is kind of stuck on this side of the board. So the queen has to focus their attention on this side, right? And in doing so, you kind of get your development together, you get your stuff together, and you just basically get a better position compared to white's. So that's why over here, white cannot play f3, because that's where the knight should be going, not the pawn. And the main move here is actually just queen b3. Of course, white can just play knight f3, which makes sense. Which in this case, same idea. You chop off the knight in the future, you put your bishop on e7 or d6, and you're gonna castle and you play along the queen side. You put your rooks on c8 and b8, and you just chuck your pawns away. Okay? And another move is queen b3, attacking the pawn, which my recommendation, queen d7, protects everything together. It's the glue that holds everything together. Knight d2, e6. And what my idea is that I just want to play bishop d6. We sack a pawn, but there's some nasty traps along with this. Okay? Knight g to f3, bishop d6. So now you may be thinking to yourself, Jack, you just hung a b pawn, you stupid donut. You just go rook b8. And now you're kind of winning the pawn back. But in actuality, you don't take the pawn. Because if you do take the pawn now, the knight is pinned and you're gonna lose the knight. Let me show you what I mean. Yeah, you're losing the damn knight. Too bad. You could argue that after takes, you have you have takes and rook b6. But I think there's actually a better move. Castles. What? You don't even take the knight, you castle first. Wow, I mean, it's unbelievable, man. Okay, but yeah, definitely do not take the pawn. I suggest here you should just castle and play it safe. And after you castle, now this bishop isn't doing much because it's not pinning anything. It's just putting pressure on the knight. So you chop off the knight, okay? And also because most of your pawns are already on light squares, you don't really have to worry about your light square control that much. More so you should be worrying is your dark square control. And now the next move here is you play rook b6. You're going to double up your rooks. You're going to take this pawn and you're going to play something like pawn to g6. And now you just basically put your pawns on light squares since you've traded your light square bishop away. And your queen already does a good job at protecting the dark squares. Just look at the amount of squares it just controls, man. It's freaking insane. So now you can just take rook ab1 and then rook fb8. And if they take here, you just have good control of the second rank. And you can just play moves like g6, king g7, and your king is safe. Your pawns are on great squares. And generally, you just want to play along the queen side. And you may consider rerouting your knight to b6. So that's how I want to play this position. One more variation before I leave though is, what if they just don't take the pawn and castle? And in this case, you just want to develop normally, okay? Here, you can play queen c7 to protect the pawn. And after something like, some people will play knight e5 for sure, which in this case, you will slide back your bishop and reroute your bishop to g6. Typical standard idea. And the other move is, let's say queen c2, and you chop off the knight. You can chop off, you can choose to chop off, or you can just continue developing with rook fc8, rook ab8, and again, you play along with the queen side. Have fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope I explained all variations in detail, and I'll see you in the next one when I cover the Panov variation. Goodbye.